a big week. Can we just dive into the reviews?
Let's
Because
do reviews.
stuff to talk. Okay, folks, into the reviews.
It stinks.
Simon, what are we doing? Long legs or Lady in the Lake? Flip the coin. Where
Well,
are we at?
I'm keen after your less than, let's say your more ambivalent opening to the show with regards to Lady in the Lake. Let's do the first double L review, and then I'll get onto the second double L review later on.
I saw you once, Maddie Schwartz. Before any of this began, I saw you. Alive. I was Cleo Johnson. But in my death, I became the Lady in the Lake.
Okay, Simon, let's just put the cards out on the table. One, have
Yes.
you ever heard of this program?
My fleeting interest in Natalie Portman means that this has come across my radar, but I know next to nothing about it and haven't really built up an enthusiasm to watch it yet.
Well, then, my question two, which was, do you know the stars Natalie Portman, really sort of ruins the intro I was really sort of planning to craft here, Simon. Look, here's the thing. Apple TV Plus, they have these buzzy TV programs that seem to debut almost every second week of late.
They
They've
really
got
do.
good production quality, production values at least. Pretty top-notch sort of star talent being drawn to what's inevitably limited series after limited series. And so to have a series debuting on TV in any given week with Natalie Portman in it, you'd think probably should be a bigger deal than what it seems to be. But Lady in the Lake, like, nobody's talking about the show, and I don't really understand why, because I think it's actually really pretty good.
Wow,
This
okay. Was not expecting that.
Yeah, like, this is Natalie Portman. She stars... So I'll give the logline for the show. In 1960s Baltimore, 1966 specifically, and that's noteworthy to TV fans, as that is television's greatest year for television of all time. The facts speak for themselves, Simon. 1966, the year of Batman, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, pretty
Sure.
big in itself. You keep going, there's more shows. Look, this takes place in 66. You've got a aspiring reporter, and look, she's not really a reporter in this first episode. I guess that happens a little bit further in. But she's pursuing the murder of a forgotten young woman. Now, you read that line, and, you know, it doesn't really tell you that much. What you get when you're actually watching the show is it is a tale of two women. You've got Natalie Portman's character, who is Maddie Schwartz. Pay attention to that surname, because this show is exceptionally Jewish. Really, really, really Jewish. The first episode has her effectively exiting a marriage from her husband, played by Brett Gelman, who plays Milton Schwartz. It's a family who are just deeply steeped in the Jewish culture and lifestyle that comes with that. And of course, it is the 60s, so the idea of her leaving her husband is a bit of a issue in itself, but then you add in the cultural complexities to that, and suddenly you find that this is a woman who's really doing something which is fairly unthinkable of the time. So you've got her. She becomes a bit fascinated with the emerging story of a young Jewish girl who's gone missing in the community within the last 24 hours. She's out there trying to... By the end of the episode, she's joined the search to try to find what's happened to this girl. The other story taking place here is Moses Ingram. You'd know her from... Do you remember The Queen's Gambit, which was our favorite show
Sure.
from a couple of years ago? There was a young African-American actress who played like the friend in the orphanage at the beginning and then sort of comes back into it towards the end of the series. If you remember her,
yes.
that's Moses Ingram. She's back in this, and she was fantastic in Queen's Gambit. Really good here as well. And she's playing this woman named Cleo Johnson, who obviously African-American woman dealing with, and it's in Baltimore, so very sort of strong African-American population and culture, I guess. She works in a bar, a nightclub. Being that she's in a nightclub, there's lots of affiliation with local gangsters and criminals who may or may not have something to do with the young missing girl that is driving the narrative for at least the first episode.
I see the connection. Okay, good.
Yeah. So you've got that happening. Her life is going to collude, I guess, with Natalie Portman's character. I don't want to go too much further into that, but you do kind of know where it's heading from the very first episode, Simon, because this is a limited series, and I created myself a little checklist, which is how I was really trying to determine whether I was going to like this show or not. And this was my thinking for like the first like 5 minutes of the show. As the show opened, dead woman narrator, that was a big strike for me. The dead woman narrator is the Moses Ingram character. And so throughout the course of the series, she's talking about her journey, about the Maddie Schwartz's character's journey, and, everything happening around. And I don't know about you, Simon, but I'm pretty tired of the device of the dead female narrator.
Yeah, they American Beauty that a bit, don't they? That's what that actor did in that movie. It takes you out of the real life dramatics of a story. It's kind of like a dream sequence for me, in that it's a device that can or cannot work to varying degrees. But yeah, no, I get your point.
Yeah, look, dream sequence is a really good way to think about this, because it does provide a bit of a dreamy sort of attitude, because you can't really sort of buy into them because they stop being a reliable or an unreliable narrator. Like, you just kind of have to assume that's a bit of an omnipresent, voice of the writer rather than the actual character who's died, because they're always able to give you information of characters where they wouldn't have that information themselves. It's really, it's a device which, American Beauty used it, but also 5,000 other movies and TV shows have in the years since. And boy, I could not be more tired of it. So anyway, that was a big strike against the show, and that's the opening of the show. So I was really put offside very quickly with it. But then suddenly, I see some of the coolest opening titles I've seen in some time. Like, they're really cool and very funky looking.
You love your titles, yeah.
Yeah, check them around. Check them out. And then the thing that happens straight after the opening titles is it opens with a shot of a man in a laneway, like an alleyway, who's in a postbox costume who's urinating. And I'm like, I've never seen a TV show open with this before. Suddenly,
more of that.
Yeah, so I was in. And then, like, within a couple of minutes, I was actually just really into it and forgot to keep on going with my checklist. So my bit for this show was just completely ruined because, I couldn't really focus enough on my list because the actual show was so good that I was kind of lost. A couple of other people that are probably worth noting appearing in this to speak to the quality of it. If you add Pruitt Taylor Vince to anything, immediately I know this is a pretty good quality production.
Sure.
It's just facts. It's just science.
We know him as the man with the slightly wonky eye, who's been in many, many things to great acclaim over the years.
Yeah, look, I mean, first time I really paid attention to him was back in Murder One, back in the day, where he, in the second season, they broke that season up into like 3 different arcs, but he was definitely the most compelling of the court cases they worked on in that season of the show. But we've seen him in so many other movies and shows, and in my brain, I want to say that he was like at the end of Zodiac. Was it him, or was it the other guy that... No, it wasn't Taylor Pruitt Vince. It was the other guy that seems to get the roles that Pruitt Taylor Vince doesn't have. Oh, gosh, I can't think of his name at all now.
That guy in The Thing. Yeah, good one. Yes, I know who that is. I remember Pruitt Taylor Vince from the Stallone film and the De Niro film Copland. He played a very pivotal role in that and was terrific in that as well. But he's been in so many things over the years. You know exactly who he is as soon as you see his face and his wonky eye.
Look, absolutely. Mark Feuerstein pops up in this one as well. Who else have I seen through the course of the episodes? Look, it's not exactly a who's who, but there's definitely a few good... obviously, you got good leads in the Natalie Portman.
Well, you're burying the lead a bit here, and you haven't mentioned Natalie Portman to any great extent. Is her sort of foray into the small screen limited series realm worth the journey?
She's Natalie Portman. I think Portman always delivers a pretty good performance. It's pretty rare to walk away saying that she was the worst thing about something, because that's never been true. She's always just reliable and good. I didn't think I needed to illustrate anything beyond saying Natalie Portman's in this.
Yeah, no, that's a plus, absolutely. And from an era that absolutely suits her, the Jackie film, and she seems to fit very nicely into that milieu.
Yeah, and look, I don't think I've ever actually seen her sort of play Jewish as heavily as she does in this, which is kind of interesting. And I keep on going on about the Jewishness of the show, but it's really, really Jewish in a way that I was just really surprised by when I started watching it.
We get it. It's Jewish.
Oy vey, enough with the Jewish already. But yeah, look, Lady in the Lake, 7 episodes. It debuts on Apple TV Plus tomorrow or tonight. I'm just trying to work out what day it is. I think embargo ends today, so it must be tomorrow on Friday. Check it out. I think it's really quite good. It probably won't be your favorite show of the year, but it'll be probably a show that you think about quite a bit more than almost any other TV show you will watch this year.
Okay, I'm surprised you set that up as I'm going to rip into this, and that's why you haven't heard about it, everyone. But maybe everyone should be hearing about it. Well done, Dan Barrett.
Well, this is it, and this is why I don't get why people aren't talking about it. But also, I think one of the problems that Apple TV Plus has broadly is really, really tight critic embargo deadlines. So we actually I got in trouble for violating one of the embargoes a couple of weeks ago. I went 2 days early on something.
Which one? Can you tell us? Can you tell us? What happens when you violate an embargo?
It was that terrible show, the one with Eva Longoria in it.
Oh, yeah, the women in the mountains or the women who go to Spain.
I thought it debuted on the same day we released the podcast, but apparently it was like the Wednesday following or something. And I was just very apologetic and they were very nice about it. But even so, the message was clear. Don't violate embargoes, young man. And like, that's fine. Like, I certainly appreciate the need for PR to put in place embargoes. But what it means is that people won't be talking about Lady in the Lake until the day of release. And I just don't know that's enough time for people to really get their head around like the value of something. People want to make a viewing decision on that Friday, the day of release. You kind of need 2 or 3 days there to be a bit of a bubbling that people know the show exists, let alone makes the decision of whether to watch it or not.
That's interesting because Apple give us such a long leading time with the screeners too. They're terrific with the period. We've watched that new the fashion show, the French one with Lambert Wilson in it. We've already watched that, and that's not out till like end of September or something. So we're happy to have the screeners, but we just can't talk about them until the day of release, which seems odd. But hey,
it's good because most critics who want to do like an entire series deep dive on it before they start writing about it, like it gives them that opportunity, and I think that's great for them. I personally don't like talking about things outside of the episodes that are debuting on day of release. Okay, but again, that's just my choice. But you know. Mm-hmm. It's all cool. People have different approaches to it. But yeah, like I just kind of think that the review embargoes are just too tight against the release dates and it just gets a bit awkward. And it's probably not such an issue if it was like Tuesday nights, but on Fridays, like you just want to sit down and start watching something. You don't want to get online and start taking a look at a couple of the reviews going, oh, what does Daniel Feinberg from THR think about this program? And of course, if Daniel Feinberg is very positive of something, you know, that's not necessarily a sign to watch it because that guy's awful. Simon Foster. Let's go talk about some movies. There's a very big, well, not very big, but it's a very buzzy title called Longlegs. Can we watch the trailer?
The letter was left with the bodies. We have 10 letters like it over the past 30 years. And all of them signed with one word. Longlegs.
Yes, Dan Barrett, it is a film that has landed with a lot of attention at the US box office. It's had one of the biggest independent film openings in a long time, $22 million over the first 3 days. It is a legitimate summer hit, I guess, in terms of independent releases. Why is it connected so well? We'll get to that in a minute. This is the story of what appears to be a serial killer played in utterly creepy prosthetic makeup by an over-the-top, in a good way, Nicolas Cage. We learn of his exploits through the investigation of one FBI agent, Lee Harker, played by the wonderful Micah Munro. She has kind of a psychic connection, which we learn about in an opening sequence that sees her on an assignment with a fellow police officer, the fellow FBI agent, that doesn't end well for him. But she is suddenly thrust into the world of this serial killer called Longlegs through her sort of wavering psychic ability. So just from that description, just from the opening few moments, you know that this takes some big leaps in terms of what it's asking its audience to believe. You've got a very young FBI agent who has psychic abilities, who may have had a young connection with the serial killer that is Daddy Longlegs, who's got a kooky mum who's kind of a bit like Carrie's mum in the movie Carrie, played by Piper Laurie, who's a very religious fanatic. So there's all these kind of whirring religious iconography and serial killer tropes that are abounding in this movie. But what the director, a guy called Osgood Perkins, does, and if you know that name from your horror film history, you'll know that he is the son, son? Yes, son
Yeah,
of
son.
Anthony Perkins. Or grandson. I'm not sure. I should have researched that. But
Son.
he's of the Perkins lineage. Yes, Dan? Son. It's the son. Good.
Son. Yeah.
So, and he has a very distinctive visual style. This has the same sort of buzz about it, and I'm certainly not going to compare it at this early stage of its release cycle, but it has that same kind of buzz about it that Blair Witch had, that the Blair Witch Project, the original one, also something like Silence of the Lambs, something like Seven. These are movies that come with this very distinct directorial stamp and a very specific visual style that audiences may not have seen to any great extent in the past. Even in Osgood Perkins films, he hasn't done anything like this before. But also need a really strong and buzzy marketing campaign to sell. And there's been a lot of talk about what Neon, the US distributor, have done in their marketing for this movie. And then you need the film to deliver on that marketing. And when all those points come together, you get a film that does create a lot of buzz at the box office. You get, certainly in Longlegs, a really terrifying serial killer movie. And you also get this sense of, I want to see what this genre space is doing right now and where it's headed. And that's what Longlegs does. All those points come together at a moment in movie going when, you know, there's been some stops and starts with the horror genre at the cinema. Things like Abigail recently and Immaculate to a certain extent, and The First Omen sort of had okay openings but didn't find traction. This one we're hoping will find traction based on its originality. It's at times really quite horrific and nightmarish visual style. And a couple of really idiosyncratic and unusual performances in the lead that make this a quite unlike any other serial killer film I've seen. The spin at the end is both shocking and really compelling in the moment. I must admit that Fiona, my wife, and I had a good time afterwards picking through some pretty major plot holes in the movie, but it is so visually engaging as you go along and so moody and terrifying that you're not struck by those as the film unfolds. So Longlegs, I think, finally a film that's worth the hype, delivers on the hype, and makes for a really terrifying night out at the cinemas. So that's a big bonus.
Yeah, so I've seen the first 20 minutes of this one, Simon.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
25 minutes? I've seen almost 30 minutes of this.
It's a good opening 30 minutes.
Well, for reasons of I had a screener for it and I hit like a technical issue with it and so couldn't see the rest of it. But I really enjoyed the first 30 minutes. Particularly, I like seeing Blair Underwood pop up in anything, so that's always a plus. Yes. But what struck me with this was it's got a really just interesting tone and visual quality to it all. It reminded me a bit of like some, like, do you pronounce them Giallo films?
Giallo, yeah, the Italian Giallo films, yep.
Yeah, in terms of just like that sort of real sort of visceral style to them. I can't really remember seeing like an American horror film that just feels this distinctive and unique in its presentation sometime.
That's interesting you say that, and I wanted to make the point that Micah Munro has very carefully chosen her horror project. She's become this real sort of, not so much underground star, she's still a very mainstream actress, but she has
I'd say underground star, Simon.
Okay, well, she sort of burst on the scene with It Follows, and that's a film that has this similar sort of stark, quite terrifying visual style to it. She made a film called The Watcher, and now she's made Longlegs. She is picking her genre work very carefully, and that is starting to show, and that pays off in Longlegs. So you're right, there's not a lot of films that look like this. The ones that do look like this often star Micah Munro. So that's, I think she's an actress to really watch going forward.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, even the way that you phrased it there, like it makes it sound as though the visual sort of feeling and vibe around this is similar to something like It Follows, but I don't know that's necessarily true. Like, you know, I could look at It Follows and then something like, what was that movie, The Myth of the American Sleepover? And like visually, they're kind of the same,
sure.
And almost purposely so.
Random, totally random one you pulled out of midair, but you're absolutely right.
It's not that random. But anyway, like you sort of look at that and like they feel unique and of a piece. But then you look at something like this and just visually the vibe and intent of this one just feels so different. And
Yeah.
where I think that the viewership for this is, like, people are going to go and see this in a cinema. Obviously, it's done well in the US for its opening weekend. I'm sure it'll do equally well here. But I kind of think this is going to become a bit of a late night favorite where people are taking maybe a couple of substances on the couch on a Friday, Saturday night and watching this from like 10:30, 11 o'clock onwards. Like, this has got to be one of those cult films that absolutely has a very specifically orientated audience for it.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think it has such a unique perspective and proves to be such an invigorating genre of film because of that unique perspective and all the elements that in it, that it adds up to a film that can be revisited many, many times over. I think it's a terrific work. There has been some kickback that it's kind of just another crazy, kooky Nicolas Cage performance. I don't think that's true. I think the film gives him enough room to hang himself. He doesn't. He brings a really terrifying version of psychopathic serial killer characterization to this. And, I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. If this movie continues to connect and becomes sort of the cause célèbre, add that to our Raisin Dautre rant earlier on, I could see Nicolas Cage earning a supporting actor nomination for his role in this. It will be the kind of recognition of his sort of free-flowing, jazzy kind of acting where anything goes in the moment that the Academy may want to notice. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, at least for a nomination, Nicolas Cage is a lock at next year's Oscars. There you go. You heard it here first on Screen Watching. We should also mention Alicia Witt as Lee Harker, as Micah Munro's mother in this. What do we know Alicia Witt from? She was someone's daughter, was she Candice Bergen's daughter in a TV series many years ago?
No. I believe that you want to go to the series starring, and why did her name just drop out of my head entirely? Co-star in Moonlighting, Sybil Shepherd.
Sybil Shepherd, yes.
The sitcom Sybil from the 90s.
Yes, that's what it was. It was Alicia Witt with the lovely orange hair. I remember very fondly from that. In this one, she plays a total nutcase, Piper Laurie style, like from Carrie, and you'll have a ball watching where she goes with this character. Yeah. Longlegs is in a lot of cinemas as we speak. And is the kind of horror film you'll get out and see even when you don't usually see horror films, because a lot of people are going to be talking about it.
Yeah. For this one as well, I think people are going to have a perfectly fine time watching it at home, but probably worth an effort to get out to the cinema to see this one. I think people won't regret that choice. Simon, this brings us to our favourite part of the podcast. It's called The Intermission.